Hello everyone. It's late here in Brazil. It's actually about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not on Brazilian time. Obviously, I'm up just here to do a very quick video. I know I've been actually getting quite a few questions, and it's been hard because we've been moving around and sometimes the internet is spotty. And so I know a lot of you have messaged me with just different questions here and there about Brazil. I've also gotten some questions about me. And, for those of you who are interested and curious, I welcome you to message me and I will get to your question. I just felt like it was far easier to do a video and answer some of the questions that I've gotten. And hopefully, if there are people out there who have similar questions or the same questions, hopefully this will answer your questions. So that's the whole purpose for this quick little video, and hopefully it'll be quick. But there were some really good questions, so I want to make sure I answer them to the best that I can. So without further ado, question number one is, when did you create your travel group? Okay. So I created, well, the name of my travel group is Black Travelers Network, and I created it back in 2015. And I created it because as most of you know, I've always sort of traveled. I've been traveling just different places for a very long time. And what happened when I entered like the workforce, I noticed that I would travel throughout the country for work, and I would meet all these brothers and sisters who wanted to travel and would always say like they never really knew how to do it, or they didn't have anybody to go with them, or it cost too much money, all of those reasons why they didn't travel. And so I created the community. Really, it started as a blog. It didn't even really start as a travel group per se. It started as a travel blog, and the whole goal of the blog was really to give information about ways you could travel more smoothly, tips. People could take the tips, and it became increasingly clear after I started going to different places that more people wanted to not just read about travel, but wanted to come along with me and go different places. And so at that point, that's when I decided to transition from it being just strictly a blog to being more of a travel group slash travel community. And that was back in we started in 2015, and traveled in 2016, 2017, and now obviously we're going places this year. And so it was just a way of getting brothers and sisters over this fear of traveling and just bringing people together for the purposes of like getting to know each other, networking, all of that. So that was why I created it. And it's just amazing seeing people who have never been out of the country or have only been to one part of the world, typically the Caribbean, go even more outside of the States and outside of the Caribbean. It's really a lot of fun, and those are the moments that I'm enjoying the most about it. So hopefully that answers your question. um, so this question is, can anyone be a part of uh, Black Travelers Network, even if they are not Black? The answer is yes. We do not discriminate. We can't discriminate. So we do not discriminate, and anyone can be a part of the community and come on our trips, and whatever information they find beneficial, they obviously have an opportunity to benefit from whatever information that's out there. But I also make no apologies or no excuses about the fact that the community is for Black travelers. And if there are others who do not consider themselves to be Black travelers, just, they just travel, they just like to travel and want to soak up some of the Black experience, by all means, you are welcome to come along. It's not, Black folks generally don't, and this is a very general statement, but our people just generally don't discriminate like that. So yeah, I mean, anybody who wants to join can join. And has it been a turnoff, the name of the Community Black Travelers Network? It has been a turnoff to many people who are not Black because they don't really understand it. They feel like it's exclusive. But Black people in general do embrace the the name of the group, which is Black Travelers Network. So it hasn't been a problem, at least in our community, and those people who identify themselves as Black. And that question actually comes up a lot. It comes up a lot, especially among other Black people. Like, don't you think that's a little racist? No, I don't. um, yeah, no, I don't at all. But it identifies who our target audience is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's not a community for everyone because obviously not everyone would be accepting of the name Black Travelers Network. And I'm not just talking about like non-Black people, but I'm talking about Black people as well. But I knew that going in. I knew that in deciding what to call the community. I knew all of this, and I felt like the goal was to attract like-minded people. And that's what I've done. So the other question is, do you have a bucket list? And if so, what are some of the places that are on your bucket list? Okay, this is a fun question. No, I don't have a bucket list. I never have had one. It's never been like I've never felt like there's something that I want to do and can't, or there's some place that I want to go and I can't go. I've just never had that feeling. And so because I've never had that feeling, I don't feel the need to create a bucket list. If I decided tomorrow that I wanted to go someplace exclusive or exotic, I would just go. I would find a way to make it happen, make the numbers work. You always know somebody who knows somebody. So, yeah, I don't put limitations on myself, and I certainly don't let money stop me. So, for those of you out there who are like, oh, I've always wanted to go to wherever it is, but it's like, then make it happen. You can definitely make it happen. Life is about making things happen. It's not really about sitting back and waiting for things to happen to you. At least that's how I always tend to live my life, with no boundaries and no regrets. So yeah, so no, I don't have a bucket list. Are there places that I plan to go? Eventually, and I go wherever I'm like moved to go. Brazil is not a destination that I would have picked for me to go at this point in my life. I always felt like Brazil was a place that I would go later on in life, because when I looked at South America, I didn't see a whole lot of people who looked like me. So for me, it was never really a priority until I found somebody who looked like me, and we began working together. And so that's when I was like, Brazil, maybe we should go to Brazil. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great for those of you who are type A personalities who can create a bucket list and feel like that's helpful in terms of you creating goals for yourself, travel goals. But I just personally have never done it. So, good question. The other question is, was it hard planning this trip? Um, this trip, meaning the trip that I'm on right now, assuming right now we're in Brazil, and planning is always hard. Um, Fortunately, I have a great team of people that I work with, just phenomenal. And so it's not all on me. I deal with the hardest part of it, and that's in the United States. I won't say, well, let me take that back. I want to say it's the hardest part. It's just a different challenge than the people, you know, uh, than the team members and partners in Brazil. They have a different set of challenges than I do, but it is challenging. It's not easy. I find it funny that a lot of people feel like all you have to do is just pick a trip and let everybody know about it and it just happens. It's not that simple. I wish it were that simple. People say they want to do stuff all the time and they never make it happen. And so for me, planning a trip, it's really it's a long process. It's a lengthy process. We invest a lot of time into it. We invest a lot of resources from start to finish. It's months and months of planning, and I don't think people really understand how much planning goes into it, and how much discussion, and it's a lot of talking, a lot of talking to people in the destination, a lot of talking to travelers, easing people's fears. People have a million and one questions. Different things come up. People don't know how to do certain things. It's a very lengthy process. But in the end, like in being in a location like South Africa or Brazil, and after having planned for all that time and had so many conversations with people, it it's all worth it to me. It's definitely all worth it. Like, these are experiences that people will carry with them for the rest of their lives, and I don't take that lightly at all. Not to mention, them making a major investment, which is a whole nother a whole nother set of circumstances that helps me to keep myself focused in the trip planning process. Um, the next question is Brazil dangerous? Yes, and so is the United States. But yeah, Brazil is dangerous, just like our country is dangerous. I mean, the same challenges and fears you have in the United States is the same challenges and fears that you can and should have in Brazil. The only thing that makes Brazil feel like it's a little bit more dangerous is because, we're not from here, and you don't really know what to expect. It is a different country with with the whole different culture, different nuances, different politics that are very similar to our politics in the United States, but nevertheless still very different. I don't advise people to come to Brazil unless you know somebody. It's just, you really have to know how to navigate the the country, and especially the city of Rio. Rio is very tricky, and um, depending on where you go, things can go sideways pretty quickly if you don't know what you're doing. And so that's why we The people who came on our trip here in Brazil, they really wanted to be in a community of people who weren't just traveling for the fun of it, but a community of people who would prioritize their safety. And so that's what we've done every step of the way. I'm actually right now in an apartment because I have an apartment very temporarily for the time that I'm here. And I love it. I love the community I'm in. I'm close to a lot of things. I can walk around at night. I can walk around during the day. I don't recommend walking around at night by yourself. It is still a country that's unfamiliar, so I don't walk around by myself at night. But during the day, and sometimes at night, if I have to go to the grocery store, it's like right at the corner. Um, I go by myself. I don't have a problem with it, and I don't feel afraid. The building that I'm staying in has 24-hour security all day, every day. You can't just walk into the building. There's a big gate out front, and you have to be buzzed in by an on-site security guard. So I feel very safe, and even exiting the gates, I also feel very, very safe. So, um, but it is, in certain parts, just like in our country, there it's very dangerous. There's a lot of corruption here in Brazil, and so because of that, certain neighborhoods and certain communities aren't safe. And I can't stress how important it is to know people and to, really, like, I wouldn't advise just booking a flight and saying, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to see this, that, and the third. Like, no, you really have to. I would advise you going with someone or with people who are very knowledgeable about the areas and who are well versed in the nuances and well versed in the politics of the country, as well as the cities and the communities and the neighborhood. So that's my spiel about the dangers of Brazil and Rio. The other question is, what have you learned about Rio? I've learned a lot about Rio. I actually think that warrants its own separate video, of which I will be doing. I don't know if I'm going to do the video once I return to the States or before I leave the state, or before I leave here. But I've learned so much. Every travel experience is very different, whether we are coming to the same place again next year. The experience is going to be completely different. We have to switch it up and mix it up. And so the places that we visited now aren't necessarily where we'll go next year. It's just so many different angles to one destination and one location. What have I learned? I'll tell you what's the most interesting thing I've learned. I've learned a couple of things to me that are really, really interesting and really kind of fascinate me. I learned a little bit more about just the sex industry, and I'm actually really curious about it because I look at it. It's not just about, well, let me back up. I'm curious about the sex industry, and I'm curious about the drug industry, which is little interesting. But I'm curious about those two things because I think for me, it's more about understanding elements of the economy that are obvious, and also the elements of the economy that's not obvious. And so, you know, obviously, there, just like any other country, there are aspects that are public and above board. So, for example, Brazil, the country itself, has invested a lot of money in its infrastructure, and part of that what was as a result of the Olympics being held here, but it's actually happening all throughout the country, so not just in Rio. So that's clearly connected to the economy of the entire country, and so that's one aspect. So they're spending a lot of money in building roads and bridges, and just public trans public transportation. And again, I'm talking beyond Rio. So that definitely fuels the economy by providing jobs and providing access to different jobs. For people to be able to get around is really important for employment purposes, as well as for the development of the country. So that is that. But then I was studying more about like the prostitution that happens. And obviously here it's legal, so there's nothing illegal about it. And there's one particular area that's pretty known for prostitution. And I was researching it a little bit, and I found that not only is it heavily trafficked, but that there are thousands of sex workers in this particular favela, and that the favela itself can and will see as many as 3 to 4 thousand people a day coming just for the purposes of having sex. And I found that fascinating, and I was just like, I wonder how much money that 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 amounts to, because it's not very expensive for people who want to have sex. For people who want to exchange money for sex, it's not expensive at all. It's actually pretty inexpensive, but it depends on a lot of factors in terms of what that price actually is. There's also a lot of danger that comes with that. Um, Outside of the obvious dangers, I would say some of the not so obvious dangers being, in going and frequenting some of and frequenting some of the areas where you can easily pay for it. You run the risk of getting robbed. You can run the risk of just being in a situation where you don't know what to expect. And so that is another thing that I learned. What else did I learn? I learned about how and back home in the States, weed is like a really big thing in terms of consumption, like recreational consumption. Um, I learned that Coke is a big thing here. It may even be a little bit bigger than the weed. And obviously in the States, Coke is a big thing, but I would say weed is probably a little bit more prevalent in the States than it is than it's more prevalent in the States than Coke. And obviously you have Coke all throughout the States as well. But here it seems a little bit reversed. I ran into this guy in the airport and who was talking about like just how Coke is readily available all throughout South America, almost easier or just as easy as weed is available in the United States. And so that was a deep conversation I got into with this guy, this white guy who was backpacking throughout South America, and he had one of those stories that he was talking to me about. So So that was fascinating. And also just the violence against, it's the same narrative as in the United States about, police violence against um, Black men. It's definitely it happens here so much, so frequently, probably more frequently than it does in the United States. I was reading somewhere that it said as many as 71 out of 100. Yeah, 71 out of 100 Black men who have been arrested or something like that have get killed by the police here. Some outrageous number. So 71%. That was another something that I learned. Like their struggle is very much the same struggle as our struggle in the United States. It just probably happens on a different scale than what it happens where we are. So um, yeah, and there's so much more, and that's a lot. But I can go on and on and on about stuff I've learned. Another comment is about the safety in Brazil. Again, I think I've answered that question. Another question is, where's the next place? I'm assuming that the question is, where's the next place our travel community is going? And the next place is, again, we're coming back to Brazil, a different part of Brazil. All of Brazil is not the same. Brazil is a very, very big country. It's huge. So we will be coming back in June. That's June 25th. June 25th through July 2nd. And for those who want to stay a little bit extra time, like a few extra days in Brazil, that's also an option. So that's June 25th through July 2nd. It's a really good price point on the front end of that particular trip, which is Bahia. Beautiful, beautiful location. One of my favorite places to visit. I love Rio, but Bahia is like home. It's something different and very, very special. So that's Bahia. And also Rwanda. We're looking at Rwanda. Again, Rwanda has a lot of opportunities. Someone recently asked me, what about the war? Is there a war in Rwanda? There's no way I would be going to a location if there was war. So there's not a war in Rwanda. There was a time where it was very, oh, I don't know why I'm itching. There was a time when there was war, and it wasn't very far. It wasn't a very long time ago. I think it was in the 90s or something, like early 90s. And this. She was referring to the genocide that happened in Rwanda. Um, and so that's something we're definitely going to learn more about. But Rwanda is probably one of the safest countries in the world. It's also probably one of the cleanest the places in the world. So for those of you who are interested, that trip is supposed to be from June 1st to June 9th. That one is really special because we are going to take a closer look at some of the business opportunities that exist in Rwanda. It's very friendly in terms of business. It's a tiny little country, but it is growing in terms of its economy and in terms of the opportunities that are available to those in the African diaspora. And so we definitely want to go deeper and explore East Africa, enjoy safari, learn more about the city of Chikali, and just visit some great spaces and places in the country, and yeah, give people that African experience that many people have indicated they wanted. So that's what's coming up. And anybody can kind of go and do trips. I feel like the goal of my goal is to make sure that we're serving the community as much as we possibly can. So the trips are important. We have other things in the pipeline that we're working on, that will give hopefully more of you an opportunity to be a part of this traveling process, especially for those of you who may not be able to travel as easily. We want to still make sure you're connected to what's going on throughout the diaspora. And so there's some things that we have in the pipeline that we're working on, that we'll be talking about once we get a little bit further along with it. But yeah, I just want to make sure that I am serving our community as much as I possibly can, and offering as many different options as we can for those of you who want to travel but can't. And I feel like, because it's easy for some of us to say, like, oh, if you want to travel, you can travel. Anybody can travel. That's not always the case. I mean, sometimes people have families and children, and that's a whole different thing when you're traveling with kids. And so I totally understand that there are many of you out there who want to make moves, or your money is funny right now, and you can't necessarily make moves at the moment. But yeah, so we're working on some stuff, and so I cannot wait to make it available to all of you. So with that being said, this was supposed to be quick, kind of not so quick. I just wanted to dig in a little bit deeper and answer some of these questions. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to message me and I will definitely answer them. But it is 4:30 and I should probably get some rest because I gotta be up in a couple of hours, getting ready to go because we have a full day, another eventful day of activities and events all throughout the day as we celebrate Carnival here in Rio de Janeiro. So take care, you guys. Talk soon.